Today on Legally Us, Dwayne Wade is accused of exploiting his transgender daughter by his ex-wife. Plus, Diana Jenkins identifies the bots, Naomie Olindo fires back, and Kanye West is sued for $4.5 million. We've got that plus so much more on today's Legally Us. Hey everyone, welcome to Legally Us. I'm Christina, and that's, of course, Neama Rahmani, president of West Coast Trial Lawyers and former federal prosecutor. Hi, Neama. How are you?
Hi, Christina. How's it going?
Good, good. There's a lot to get to this week. So let's kick it off with Dwayne Wade, because his ex-wife is fighting a legal petition to allow their daughter to change her gender and name, claiming that their child is being pressured financially to make this decision. So according to legal documents, his ex filed an objection to his petition for recognition of their daughter Zaya's change of gender and issuance of a new birth certificate, as she wants to identify as female. However, she is only 15 years old and must get court order and permission from her parents. So his ex-wife claims that Dwayne is positioned to profit from the minor child's name and gender change with various companies through contacts and marketing opportunities, including but not limited to deals with Disney. She said in April of 2022, Dwayne invited her to one of his residences in Georgia. And during this occasion, he informed her that a lot of money had already made and that additional money will be made in relation to their child's name and gender issue. She said, quote, Dwayne told me that he intended to make our child very famous due to the name and gender issue, and also informed me that there would be endorsements, contracts associated therewith. She is asking that the court wait until Zaya is 18 to make this decision. So this is very interesting. I don't think we haven't talked about something like this before. So does Dwayne's ex have any merit in this case?
Well, I don't know if she has any merit, but she does have a say. So whenever there's a split, the parents may decide on physical custody, but usually they both have legal custody. So even if the child isn't living with them, they can make medical decisions for them. And that's exactly what this is. And like you said, Christina, this is a relatively new area of the law when you have parents disagreeing over whether a child should be able to transition. And fun fact, my wife, she's an attorney for foster kids, and she actually handled the first case in this country where the court allowed a child to transition over both biological parents' objections. And that's something that just happened recently. So this is something where judges are now having to deal with parents who may disagree with each other or with their child over how they're going to identify. And they're going to have to make a ruling as to what is the best interest of the child.
Got it. So can their daughter get involved and fight back, considering she's only 15 years old? Excuse me.
Absolutely, Christina. That's something that the judge is going to ask. What does the daughter want to do? How does she want to identify? And of course, Dwayne's ex is going to say that she doesn't want to transition, and this is all about money. So that's something that the judge was going to have to directly ask the child. How do you identify? Tell me a little bit about why you want to transition, to see, is this something that she wants to do, or is this something that the parents are pushing?
Got it. So this kind of all really relies on the daughter. So even if his ex-wife can prove that, he is trying to use her for financial gain, this kind of relies on Zaya, correct?
It really does, because the legal standard is what is the best interest of the child, whenever you're dealing with a situation like this. So that's something that the court is going to determine based on, what both parents say, but really, what does the child say? And the good thing about children that are a little bit older, when you're dealing with transition issues, they're verbal. You can talk to them, unlike children who are children, like they're nonverbal and they can't speak. Sometimes, you're dealing with kids that just come home from the hospital and you have to decide, where is that child going to be placed? With a parent, with a relative, or in foster care. They can't communicate. But the fact that you have an older child, a teenager, the judge should be able to determine what he or she wants to do.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to get messy, and you feel bad for Zaya kind of going through all this.
Of course, it's hard enough to have a child be stuck in the middle of a messy divorce. And now you have filings related as to how they identify. And let's not forget, transgender children already have tough. The rates of, suicide and other depression, and other kind of mental illnesses are higher because it's harder to be a transgender child in this country. And if you have parents resisting what you're doing, it can make that transition even more difficult.
All right, let's move on to a case that we talked about a few weeks back. So Real Housewives of Beverly Hills star Diana Jenkins has supposedly identified a person who may be responsible for cyberbullying Garcelle's 15-year-old son, Jax. So Page Six reported that her legal team is looking to a Northern California resident whose IP address and phone number were linked to the Instagram account at Queen of the Tea. So at Queen of the Tea was among the many accounts that Jax revealed had sent him racially offensive messages back in August. So he actually shared a couple of those messages from Queen of the Tea. So that was somebody that definitely sent him messages. But now that the bot has been identified, what are the next steps in this case?
The next step is to substitute the Queen of the Tea as a defendant in the case. Originally this was filed as a Jane Doe or John Doe, an anonymous case to get subpoena power. So then the parties can go after Meta or Google or any other social media company. Now that those subpoenas have been returned, they're going to get subscriber information, name, email address, date of birth, and those types of things. So you're going to substitute the actual person, whether it's an individual, whether it's someone using some sort of AI or other computer program to send these hateful and offensive messages. And they're going to be substituted as defendants in the case, replacing that Jane or John Doe.
So what could happen to this Queen of the Tea person if they, have to go to trial or things like that?
Yeah, well, they're going to be outed. They're not going to be able to remain anonymous behind a computer keyboard anymore. They're going to be publicly named in a lawsuit, in a court filing, and they're going to have to answer that filing just like any other lawsuit. They might have to sit for a deposition. They might have to do discovery. And if that case goes all the way to trial, they might have to show up at trial and testify. And if they're found liable for doing something defamatory or intentionally inflicting emotional distress on a child, they may actually have to pay money damages as well.
Interesting. Is it likely that there are probably more than just one bot? Because I know Garcelle is conducting her own investigation. She actually said a while back that they were going to have the results soon, but she hasn't made that public yet. So is it possible that they are looking into several different bots in this situation?
It's possible, Christian. It's possible they're separate bots. It's possible there's several fake social media accounts or handles run by the same person to troll on social media. And again, we're talking about children who are involved here. So I think parents are going to be much more aggressive in protecting those kids, because even though you may be on a reality TV show, you don't necessarily want to subject your children to that. So I understand why the moms here are moving forward pretty aggressively. And it's going to be interesting to see if there's one Queen of the Tea or there's more individuals who are outed in the coming weeks.
Definitely going to be interesting. All right. Well, another week, another problem for Kanye West, because he is getting sued for over $4 million. So according to legal documents that were obtained by the Blast, a business manager named Thomas St. John filed a lawsuit against Kanye, claiming he stopped paying a monthly fee agreed upon by the two parties. He claimed that Kanye got nasty and aggressive with him during a recent meeting and that he stopped paying his bills. So St. John says that he was approached by Kanye earlier this year to provide business management, accounting, and taxation services. He was even named as the CFO of Donda. At the time, St. John says he was adamant to Kanye that he wanted a 2-year guarantee to start working for him. They eventually agreed on an 18-month contract, and that contract included a monthly retainer fee of $300,000. So Kanye allegedly called a meeting just weeks after striking the deal to discuss dropping the company. Following the meeting, the company says Kanye failed to pay the remainder of his contract, which included the next 15 months. But he is now suing him for damages for $4.5 million. So a lot to unpack here. I mean, is it interesting that he had a retainer fee of $300,000? Is this like an interesting contract to make, first of all?
Well, I think, before someone wants to get into business with Kanye, he obviously has a history of erratic behavior. They want some sort of guarantee. Now, Donda at the time was Kanye's sports agency. He had a few athletes. And of course, everyone pulled out after his recent anti-Semitic remarks. So the company seems like it's going to go under. So the business manager now is trying to collect $300,000 a month is a pretty hefty sum, but apparently that's what he was able to negotiate with Kanye. And even though Kanye didn't want a 2-year term, reportedly St. John said he agreed to a 1.5-year or 18-month term, and he only paid 3 of those months. So there's 15 months outstanding.
Mm-hmm. Is it interesting that he's suing him for $4.5 million in damages, considering that's not the amount of money that he's owed?
Well, again, I'm not a mathematician. It seems like if we take St. John's allegations at face value, if he really is owed for 15 remaining months at 300,000, I think we do get to that 4.5 million number. But again, he's going to have to mitigate his damages. So that means he's got to find other work, look for other jobs, and whatever he would find during this 15-month period would actually offset the amount of money that Kanye would owe him. And of course, we haven't looked at the agreement. It may have a clause that allows termination if the company goes under or for some other type of breach. So really, when it comes to these contractual agreements, the language of the agreement controls. So we'll see what kind of language Kanye's lawyers put in there.
Right. So this is pretty much it could be black and white depending on what was signed in that contract.
Absolutely. If St. John was able to negotiate a guaranteed agreement, payment no matter what, you can't terminate during that 18-month period, and he's probably going to be able to get paid from Kanye. And of course, we'll see how much money Kanye has because he's losing endorsement deals one after another.
Right. So you feel like this one will definitely have to settle depending on what's in that contract.
I think so, Christina. Usually these contracts are pretty clear and black and white, and there's not much room to maneuver. So I would expect the lawyers to get involved and settle this and walk away.
Yes, definitely. All right. Well, this was coming off of a story that we talked about last week with Southern Charm star Naomie Olindo. She was sued for fraud and breach of contract over her Alibi fashion brand. Well, she is firing back with a response to her former colleague, Virginia Ginny Cox's motion. So her attorney wrote in a court filing stating after being terminated for employee theft and other misconduct, Cox filed this defamatory lawsuit with the intention of extorting money through a set of claims that are knowingly false. Her legal team went on to say that she was always an employee and never a co-owner of the fashion enterprise. Contrary to her initial claims, they alleged that Cox was fired in May after a flurry of incidents of concealed misconceptions, claiming that Cox developed a scheme to generate spending money by stealing companies' merchandise to sell to local consignment shops. Cox, for her part, has not publicly responded to the counterclaims, but as confirmed on October 20th, that Cox had alleged that her former coworker used deceptive tactics to maintain control over Alibi despite a 50-50 ownership. So they're asserting that she did not receive a salary compared to Cox, and that initially she wanted a trial by jury. But based on this response, should Virginia Cox be worried about this?
Yeah, sometimes the best defense is a good offense. And this is something that we expected, Christina, when we talked, that Naomi was going to say Ginny was an employee. And not only did she say that, I mean, she went after her pretty aggressively, stealing clothes, stealing money, drinking on the job. So the question is, were they really business partners like Cox alleges, or was she really an employee? So we're going to have to go through, we're going to have to see, was she on payroll? Did she fill out an I-9, W-2, all the things that you would typically do if you're an employee? Of course, you don't necessarily do that if you're a partner with someone else. So between some of the language that has been said publicly, right? Let's not forget, Naomi famously said that this is my business partner. Of course, now she's saying that this was my marketing director. So we're going to have to really kind of untangle the financial documents and those transactions to see were they really business partners, or was this an employer-employee relationship?
Got it. So this kind of comes down to, like you said, if she filled out the proper paperwork, then it could really differentiate whether or not she was an employee or co-owner. I mean, based on what you see just right here, I mean, does it seem like Naomi has the upper hand in the situation now?
Potentially, yes. And really, I think the financial documents and really the documents that were filed with the state to create the entity. It doesn't matter whether it's a corporation or an LLC or even a general partnership. Usually before you start a business, you need to get a license, you need to file documents with the city and state. So those documents will say, hey, are they partners? Are they shareholders? Are they members of the same company? And if so, then Cox is going to have the upper hand. But if not, and if those documents show that Naomi is the sole owner, and it's either an entity or even a sole proprietorship, I think she wins this case.
Yeah, very interesting. We'll have to wait and see. Well, Neama, a lot to get to this weekend. Thank you for breaking it down each and every week, as always. Much appreciated.
Of course, Christina. Thanks for having me, and I'll see you next week.
See you next week. For more news, content, and exclusive interviews, make sure to hit the sub, like, and bell button down below, and visit usmagazine.com.